4, 3, 2, 1. I told you before to be careful where you put your legs.
I was only trying to be helpful.
I can help myself. What are you waiting for? Come on. Come on. What are you waiting for? Come on. Come on.
For 7 decades, Michael Caine has been among the world's most renowned and recognisable actors.
It was just what I needed. A 1-inch god with a 2-inch penis.
The star of classics like Zulu, The Man Who Would Be King, and The Cider House Rules.
It's a miracle no one was killed.
But also films that brought his career to the brink of complete implosion.
I made a mistake.
Somehow, he has always found a way back.
You're a big man, but you're in bad shape. With me, it's a full-time job.
In this epic podcast series, we will watch and review every Michael Caine movie, from the greatest hits
You're only supposed to blow the bloody doors off.
to the incredible misses.
You failed to maintain your weapon, son.
And take a deep dive into the life and work of one of the world's most recognisable film stars.
His name is Michael Caine, and no one will forget his name.
To understand how he has made the mark of Caine.
Well, you all settled in? Right, we can begin. For God's sake, come in.
Hello and welcome to the latest episode of The Mark of Caine, what's quickly becoming our regular counselling session actually, to help each other through the challenge of watching every Michael Caine movie in the great man's vast filmography. Some days are good days, other days are a little bit like this one. Joining me on the couch, as always, is Stephen Black, the Mallow News, host of Twitter satire. Stephen, do you think this whole Caine thing has roots elsewhere for us? Like, are our lives actually this empty now that we're watching Michael Caine movies from the early 70s now we're up to, like Zee and Co?
Well, first of all, as your patient, I must ask you to, to respect the rules and regulations of patient-therapist confidentiality, and of course, you must make sure not to fall in love with me. To answer your question, yes, our lives are that empty. They are.
I think this is movie 21 since we started. Imagine, is that it's 2021 is a bit of a landmark number. Like, we've made it this far.
Yeah, keys to the door. Doesn't sound like an escape situation though. Unfortunately, it sounds like we're being locked in rather than let out.
Yeah, we're locking ourselves in more than anything. So today it's 1972. It's this film Zee and Co. I'm clinging to the fact that Get Carter was being premiered and screened across the UK when this movie was being filmed in London. I don't know why, it just kind of reminds me of better times. Actually, did you notice in this movie, I thought anyway, that Caine was basically wearing the same Get Carter suit throughout Zee and Co,
yeah,
more or less.
A little bit tighter across the bosoms, but yeah, practically the same get up.
Yeah, a bit tighter, all right, a bit tighter. Anyway, we dive in.
We dive in, yeah, because just occurred to me there, a completely and utterly misleading movie title, Zee and Co. Sounds like a musical.
Mm-hmm.
Sounds like a kind of a like a cheery, Siegfried's Follies kind of fun, enjoyable. It's everybody have a big chorus line at the end. It is none of the. It's a terribly misleading title because this film is none of those fucking things.
No, it's not in any way uplifting, and there's not a can in sight, unfortunately. But anyway, we will dive in. Okay, once again, Caine is bringing us into this whole other world of Caine, this dark, odd, murky part of his filmography for all you want, like, is a plot to hang on to feel the ground underneath your feet. This is Caine staring opposite Elizabeth Taylor as her husband in a big, gaudy, dull, bizarre dollop of 70s kitsch. He claims the critics reviewed it as a serious drama, even though he reckoned it was a black comedy. I don't know what it is. It doesn't even know what it is itself because it has two different names. This is X, Y, and Z, but also known as Zee and Co.
Oh, my Bobby is drunk. Come on, baby.
You got what you wanted, didn't you? Well, I was drunk and out of my senses. Last night didn't mean a thing.
Oh, yes, it did. But you're too big a phony to admit it. Oh, baby, it's you, baby, it's you.
Shut up!
This is Zee and her husband, Robert. For them, marriage is an intimate game in which cheating is sometimes allowed.
And you love it, love it. That's why you're still here. You love the uncertainty.
Now, Where to begin, Stephen? Oh, mercy me. Where to begin? Where do you want to go with this?
All right. First of all, this does what I hate most about some movies is that it brings me to the theater by stealth. This is, for all intents and purposes, a fucking play. And you know my long-held belief that the theater no longer needs to be a thing. Look, it was grand in its day. People used to go, they used to see plays. All well and good. Then we invented something called cinema, where you could go and see many different plays, but with greater scope. And yes, this still limps along in the background there. You know, you still keep people go, oh, you have to go to the theater. You have to see such and such Bumberland Wonder Bitch fucking playing Frankenstein one night and Johnny Lee Miller playing Frankenstein the next night. Oh, isn't it wonderful? I don't fucking care. It's like classical music. Jesus Christ, lads. It was wonderful. It is time. We didn't have the Beatles back in the fucking 17th, 18th century, lads. That's why people listen to classical music. However, you know, 20th, 21st century now, maybe, you know, fucking updated a little bit. I'm going off an attachment here. I just want to get this off my chest. Fucking University Challenge annoys the balls off. the only chance I ever get of answering a question, really, outside the random fucking guess, is the music round. And my heart sinks every time. You know, both teams, you're about to hear a piece of classical music. You're like, for fuck's sake, nobody cares. Nobody cares about classical music. Fucking nobody cares if John Virgin from fucking Pigmouth fucking University in fucking England knows Rachmaninoff's fucking fifth fucking concerto in B minor or whatever. Classical music is only of value to serial killers, detectives who pursue serial killers, and famous physicists who have degenerative diseases. That's it. As far as I'm concerned, fucking plug in the popular music into University Challenge. Get rid of all the classical music. We don't need it. And I realise as part of this, I don't mean we should euthanize Marty Whelan and all of Lyric FM. That's fine. That's fine. There's lots of people who need the company when they're about to dump a body up the Wicklow Mountains. That's fine. It has its place. But for everything else, just... Anyway, what are we talking about? What was your question?
All I'll say is there's so much to unpack there. And I'll be dead honest, there's an awful lot of stuff there. I don't even want to get near the suitcase, to be brutally honest. I just want to say you don't enjoy the intimacy of the theater, the opportunity to see actors doing their, see their craft, see them up close.
I can see I can sit in the front row of a cinema and I can see them up close.
Yeah, but this is like it's film. Surely is a more artificial medium where you can cut up a performance and create a performance from a variety of different takes. Whereas when you see the theater, it's what you got one shot at it, and if you screw it up, you screw it up, and if you make it, you make it.
You one shot, but you look into the dead eyes of a performer who's been saying the same lines fucking day in, day out for months on end. There's a level of artifice there as well. And as well, they build it around the fact that they know people can't fucking stand it because they have fucking bars in theatres, because they know, right, get people tanked up beforehand so they know, that'll get them through it. And then they have an intermission because they know they have to lift people out to get tanked up to get them through the second half.
I'd just like to point out at this stage that you once worked in a cinema where I would attend occasionally, perhaps purchase a cola on the way in, and oftentimes while watching the movie, you would arrive in with a little something to, let's say, Irish it up a little bit, whether I wanted it or not. So will you also suggest that I needed alcohol to get through watching a movie in the cinema in that moment?
Yeah, well, pretty much, yeah.
Okay, so what's your point?
But that was more for my own amusement, to be honest with you.
Okay, fair enough. Well, look, I think there's an awful lot of stuff there you need to get off your chest.
I feel better.
I'm glad we could be here for you. I'd say, our listener is thrilled. I'd say to have listened to all of that.
Thanks, Pat.
Yeah, there's a lot there to chew over, Stephen. I'll say that much. And I will agree with you on one thing. It is pretty much a piece of theatre, isn't it? It's two people. It's basically Taylor and Caine at each other and various other people kind of getting involved here and there, but essentially it's them, and it's just freaking nuts. It's mad. It's loud. There's lots of fighting. Bit of slapping around. Maybe there's a little bit of too much of that. Maybe, but yeah, it's just basically the two of them chewing up the screen.
It's a bit too much. So should we just go into you have a tolerance level for domestic abuse in movies?
I have zero, absolutely zero. And moving swiftly on. The plot, will we tell the people what this horror is all about?
I think so, yeah. I think that, again, if they haven't watched it, you might as well put them out of their misery and not make them go through 1 hour and 47 minutes of this muck.
Yeah, we can save you. This is going to save you an awful lot of pain and suffering. So Zee and Co. We're going to call it Zee and Co. It's got two names. Doesn't even know what it is. Two titles. We're just going to call it Zee and Co. So anyway, Zee is the title character. She's played by Elizabeth Taylor. She's a loud, brash socialite married to an architect, Robert, played by McCain, whose marriage kind of survives really on the energy generated by their like constant verbal sparring and fights that range from screaming matches to frantic suitcase packing to proper slaps and wheeling back then towards fairly ferocious makeup sex. Although there was one moment, kind of pre-makeup sex where Caine sticks his finger in Liz Taylor's ear. So I'm not really sure what was happening there. Anyway, movie kind of goes along. They're at a party starring a wonderful sitar band, I have to say, when Robert is attracted to another woman, Stella, who's played by Susannah Yorke, who was last seen kind of in Caine's proximity, as in she was in the same movie as him, not necessarily the same scenes, if I recall rightly, in the Battle of Britain. Anyway, in this movie, she's a fashion designer, isn't it, I think? But the chat-up lines are awful. He takes a shine for the chat-up lines are terrible. He asks her, are you a lady of leisure? And, within 30 seconds reveals himself as pretty much a monster. But somehow he wangles a dinner date even after Stella has met his clearly unhinged wife. So there's a date between Stella and Robert, some very rough kissing. So the affair begins. Liz Taylor, Zee, cottons on fairly quickly to what's happening, tries some kind of passive sabotage, breaks up a planned dinner, which moves on to a pretty rough fight where Caine ties Taylor up and actually ends up with Taylor seducing him. There's more scrapping. We meet Stella's two really bizarrely posh kids. The father is dead or something. Doesn't really matter. Clearly something's going on with her. She's kind of quick to cry and generally just a bit odd. But it's completely bewildering that she's having an affair with him. It makes no sense whatsoever, really. Long story short, anyway, Robert Caine decides to leave Zee. She reacts pretty negatively. She cuts her wrists. But now he's shacked up with Stella. He starts to lose interest. So he moves on to the secretary at work. Zee was found by Robert in the bath with the wrist cut. So she's in the hospital now, and Stella pays her a visit. In the course of their conversation, Zee realizes that Stella was also attracted to women. And so uses this towards the end of the film. She lands over to Stella and Robert's new place and effectively seduces Stella. Robert comes back to the gaff, realizes what's been going on, and Zee asks him, well, are you coming with me? We don't find out, and I'm going to give you three options why. Because A, the film ends on that cliffhanger. B, I dozed off towards the end. Or C, I just threw the monitor out the window.
All answers are valid.
Yes.
All options are valid there.
Yeah.
It's a bewilderingly boring slog of a movie. I experienced, I think I had 3 out-of-body experiences watching this. As my soul tried to escape through my eyes and float above my body in order to stop watching it.
Yeah.
I don't know why this is. I know it's based on an Edna O'Brien book, which is nice, I guess. But in terms of how that's translated into the screen, it's dull, I suppose, again, which I think is the worst offense you can ever give to a movie. It can be bad, but it can be entertaining. But this is bad and it's dull. Nobody here, you're not rooting for anybody here. Not that you really necessarily have to, but everybody in this is so appalling. I mean, fucking Caine is just a misogynist pig. Liz Taylor is just poisonous. And Susannah Yorke is just drippy wallpaper. And they're essentially the three people that... Yeah, they had another drippy wallpaper character for her. Just that they're essentially the only people on the screen. You got a couple of very stereotypical homosexual characters in there who come straight from the Hello Ducky stable of 1960s and 70s homophobia. The ending makes no sense. The seduction of Zee, or Elizabeth Taylor's seduction of your one towards the end is gross. Again, the kissing scenes are gross. I really hope, this is another thing I guess to say, but I really hope we have some attractive kissing scenes with Michael Caine at some stage during this podcast. Oh, but I like to see. I look forward to seeing him kiss a woman and not kind of go, this is an awful lot like that scene in Alien where the facehugger is basically spunking down John Hurt's throat.
Yeah,
because this is essentially whenever he was kissing Liz Taylor, it was essentially that you could almost see you could just look like he was feeding her regurgitated food. It was just just repugnant.
It's
Sees the domestic violence as a gateway to domestic violence is foreplay essentially. In this is pretty fucking bizarre from a female writer's perspective, fairly fucking weird, I guess. Whether there's internalized misogyny in Edna O'Brien's part, I would fucking doubt. We don't know what was on the page and how that ended up on screen because there's very little information about this.
I think it's fair to say, in Edna O'Brien's defense, it has to be said at this point that she wrote the script, but then there was multiple rewrites, and she was very cross with the tacking on, or the tacking on of this kind of weird lesbian love triangle at the end. She wasn't pleased at all with the outcome. So I think it's only fair to say that.
Yeah, and I mean, from that perspective, like if that's the hook of the film, that aspect takes up, I'd say, about 7 minutes of screen time, and it's towards the end. There is no undercurrent. I mean, you'd see like between any of the characters, there is no chemistry. There is zero chemistry. It is you're looking at an inert beaker of different elements that are just not reacting with each other at all. I think for this to work, I guess, at any level, that would have helped if you saw some sort of, violent passion between McCain and Liz Taylor. It's just not there. Susannah Yorke again has no screen chemistry with him. I've yet to see a movie with Susannah Yorke where I've been convinced that this is a real screen talent. She's just banal. But sure, the role does her no favors either. She's this weird weeping willow with a kind of mysterious past, which it turns out that she much like Katy Perry, she kissed a girl and she liked it, but she got expelled from school.
Yeah, that's pretty much it.
Her interactions with like Zee, Liz Taylor's character, essentially does everything she can to break up the relationship, from staging a car crash to attempting suicide. And yes, they still have incredibly civil conversations, and Susannah Yorke still ends up getting seduced by her. I mean, it makes absolutely no sense at all.
So I presume you would disagree with Caine's assertion that this movie was a little bit ahead of its time, that people weren't ready for these kind of for this kind of subject matter and this treatment of a subject matter like this.
I wouldn't agree with him at all, because I've read his book and I don't think he saw the movie. Because Caine describes this movie, he says, most of my scenes were with Elizabeth Taylor, as this is mostly about her relationship with Susannah Yorke. And his character was very much the third wheel in this love triangle. So I don't know whether or not he was kind of imagining a more erotic scenario of this book, but it certainly isn't. I mean, he spends an equal amount of time with Susannah Yorke. Well, not equal, but close to an equal amount of time with Susannah Yorke's character in this.
Absolutely.
And he says it's all about Liz Taylor leaving him for Susannah Yorke, which does not happen, and it's nowhere close to what happens in this movie.
Not at all. Like, I mean, he seems to be very confused. So because you can put more meat on the bones of his understanding of the movie. I remember seeing an interview with him from around this period. It's on YouTube. You can find it with Dick Cavett, and he talks about Zee and Co as well. And you can see that he's landed in the States, and I think, if my memory is right, the East Coast critics were giving it a bit of a decent reviews, and the West Coast critics were hammering it, or maybe it was the other way around. It doesn't really matter. It was a 50-50 split. And Caine's point was that actually this is quite a hilarious thing, because it's quite a funny film, and you should be able to see a lot of yourself in it, and maybe that's why people are being are giving it negative reviews. That almost that they were watching a movie that he thought was a kind of like more of a black comedy, as opposed to some class of a drama, which it was being reviewed as. So, like, he seems completely confused about what the movie is even about, which is kind of which says volumes really about the film itself.
And volumes. Speaking of volumes, you have to, I suppose, bear in mind his intake of alcohol at this stage in his career was quite Herculean-like. So in his defense, it's hard to remember the exact details of everything that's happened when you are plowing through 3 bottles of vodka a day.
Yeah, I think
this is my understanding.
As is your understanding, I think Shakira, his wife, had come on the scene, or was coming on the scene around now. Anyway, so I'm not. Look, we don't know the exact.
No, after it, they didn't meet until after he'd filmed it.
Did they not? Okay. Well, then he was in the. then he was rightly in the alcoholic weeds, as it were, if that was the case. His performance, there's definitely, as you mentioned there at the top, or intimated at the top, there was more of him in every which way. He's on screen more, time-wise and physically, you'd have to say.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, look, I'm not going to body shame Michael Caine.
No,
but if I am,
no.
I'm going to put it in the context of myself. I'm not a slim or slender man, so I'll put my hand up there. So this is therefore giving me the ability to go now and body shame. He's put on a fair bit of timber since the previous role. And I mean, it is. You could say it is actually for this role because Liz Taylor does slag him about his weight in terms of, like, it's all the fried food because of his working class background, bread and dripping.
Yep.
Fried breakfast. So, I mean, you could say he did it for the role, but there's no way he did it for the role.
Oh, no. I mean, we've seen the seeds of this were sown in Get Carter. We could see a little extra Caine in Get Carter. I mean, the character is pretty much, it's in that line of Alfie. The guy he played in the Megas was a bit of a git as well. He was a git. And to a lesser extent, I thought Carter. Actually, it was interesting. He refused to be filmed nude for this movie. I'm not going to do the quote in a Cockney accent, but I can tell you, I'd say it sounds hilarious if it was done in a proper Cockney accent. He says, I've never been fully nude on screen because I don't believe I have anything that anyone would be interested in seeing. Nudity isn't interesting unless a girl's undressing for me, personally.
I mean, at least he's honest.
Yeah. And I mean, he is wife-fronted in this movie. He gets out of bed at one point and there we do see a little band at the top of a pair of Y-fronts, but that's about as intimate as it gets with Caine on that one.
Yeah, I kind of wonder, was there a coterie of Cainiacs in London or in the UK and around the world who were just dying for a glimpse of his Ipcress file throughout the years and were bitterly disappointed when none was forthcoming?
Yeah, like, I mean, he's a sex symbol. He is a sex symbol. I know you have an issue getting your head around this, but Caine in 1971 was a sex symbol.
Yeah. What exactly was the symbol?
Well, I don't know. People found him sexy, didn't they? They liked him.
Yes.
With the hooded eyes, that sort of inscrutable charm, tall, manly.
Manly, I suppose. Yeah, you look at him and you can almost smell the cigarettes and brute,
Yeah, you certainly can. He wasn't first choice for this movie either. Peter O'Toole was the first choice. But, in typical Caine fashion, when Peter O'Toole wisely knocked it back, playing opposite Liz Taylor was apparently his main reason for taking the role on. Again, did you read the script? Well, he was friendly with Edna O'Brien, so maybe he did read the script. He did.
He said, when his agent said, "Look, it's with Liz Taylor," he said, "Yes, I'll do it." But then, to be sure, he read the script, and that there was no red flags there for him.
Well, maybe he read Edna O'Brien's version of the script. Maybe he didn't see the rest of it. Speaking of Caine and more of Caine, we got some athletic Caine in this movie. The opening credits are a game of ping pong between Caine and Taylor. And now we have reflected on Caine's athletic prowess in the past. I'm thinking of Hurry Sundown back in the mid '60s when he was throwing a baseball. Not exactly. He wasn't exactly the best at it, let's say. How long do you think it might have taken to get the ping pong scene right?
I'd say there was an awful lot left on the cutting room floor. I'd say it was just single shots of somebody just sellotaping a ping pong to his a ping pong ball to his racket and just getting to do swiping motions, and then just cut to Liz Taylor doing the same.
Yeah, you weren't a fan of the opening credits.
Oh, that's fucking what a way to start a movie and get the audience offside immediately. I mean, the director's probably going, well, what is marriage like? It's a battle, isn't it? It's a game. It's a game. What kind of game would best display a combative relationship? Hungry hippos? No, that possibly wasn't invented in 1972. Quoits? Lacrosse? No, it's more of a team sport. I know. Table tennis. Mm-hmm. Table tennis really gets, and you get across the kind of manic laughter from Liz Taylor, who, to be fair, and again, does not leave a scene unchewed in this movie.
No, she gives it socks all the way, doesn't she?
Yeah. I am acting all the time, and I am turning my head like I'm permanently watching a game at Wimbledon.
Yeah, it's incredible. She never lets up. It's about the only you could once you get into the swing of it and realize the film is complete crap and it doesn't really matter why she's doing it. Just watching her doing it is actually the most entertaining thing of the entire movie.
Jesus, she must have been wrecked from just turning her head, packing the suitcase.
The suitcase packing was exhausting, wasn't it? Just like
three scenes of this movie where she's just trying. Like, would she not just keep a separate suitcase packed? Would have been far more efficient.
It would appear to be that sort of relationship, but maybe it needed the suitcase packing. You know, the relationship needed the flinging of just a million dresses and caftans, lots of caftans, into a suitcase.
She wanders around. She wanders around the place dressed like Snoop Dogg at a pimp convention, and looking
really does.
And the other half of the time she looks like fucking like a Hobbit Brian May. A big mane of fucking curly hair on top of her. He's fucking whip out a guitar and start doing the solo from "We Will Rock You."
Oh God! And there is actually, speaking of rock, there is some rock again, a recurring motif. There's this awful rock music that they play constantly.
Yeah, thanks, Rick Wakeman, uncredited.
Was that Rick Wakeman's piece? Was it
Rick Wakeman and John Mayer both were party music. Uncredited for party music, so neither one of them really wanted their name associated with it afterwards. But it's very much in the kind of rock, fucking banal background. It's like a bunch of session musicians in their 50s were forced to play the forbidden music of the day. Yeah,
instructed possibly to just bang your guitar off your face.
Yeah.
See what happens. Headbutt the snare drum. Like the sitar music is. I mean, again in keeping with the time. A band plays, no one dances in time to the band as well at that party scene where Stella and Robert and Zee all meet up for the first time. Just, you know.
Oh, and even everyone else at the ancillary characters, whatever, there's some doll in it who looks like fucking Harpo Marx.
Yeah.
Just comes on and just, you know, gives these kind of the usual fucking thing in these this type of movies or plays is everybody's delightfully acerbic and upper middle class, and you know, we're all professional adulterers because basically that's what we spend most of our spare time doing. It's like fucking, you know, whatever our day job is, that really doesn't take up much time, but we really throw ourselves into extramarital affairs.
My assumption is that most parties are like that. And anytime I see these, I'm just so glad I don't get invited to cocktail parties. If that's probably it. It's Sitar bands and Harpo Marx going around trying to get married couples together. That's essentially what happens. And sausage rolls.
Sausage rolls are always welcome. But
that is true. Yeah, I like a sausage roll. Liz Taylor, right? Oh yeah, and one other thing actually, as I mentioned, I think in the last one, in the Get Carter podcast, he's off the fags, and you'll note, I think he's either a cheroot or a little cigar he's smoking. Health conscious Caine.
Yeah. I mean, yes, health conscious Caine, 100%. Yes, I would completely believe that he's off the fags at this stage. Yeah.
Yeah, so Liz Taylor's craziness, like for this movie, she had it written into the contract that she didn't need to rock up to set till 10 a.m. So everyone else was there, including Caine, like at 8:30. Tea break was Bloody Mary break for Liz, and which was all fine. She seems to have gotten on fine with everybody. She was clearly the star. There was some weariness, all right, I think, from Caine's point of view at the entourage after a while, the limos, the constant sort of in the run up to 10 a.m., the constant sort of she's out of the hotel, she's in the limo, they're at the traffic lights outside, and so on and so forth. But generally, they got on fine. The only thing was she had to stand on boxes, all right, to match his height or to get up a bit higher because she's so small. But yeah, she plays it to the total and her hilt at the time. Did you actually, like, you know, we're giving out mad, did you actually enjoy her performance on any level whatsoever, or was it just like nails down a blackboard for most of the time?
Nails on a blackboard from a performance level. Like I tried to think back to movies that I enjoyed her in, like the ones when she was younger, like maybe like International Velvet, that kind of era. But I think the older she got, the worse her performance got. Kind of more dramatic and just really over the top. Very much of an old Hollywood kind of. Everything has to be, you know, shouted and overplayed and over exaggerated.
Yeah.
For me, very much, there was very little to enjoy from anyone's performance. It's even Caine's is like fucking. This is a pure plug. This is a pure plug in and play. No, we don't need to rehearse, lads. We'll jam.
And actually, you know, he does a lot of shouting. Like he kind of, in terms of the madness, he holds his own with Taylor, like in that regard. Like, I mean, if she goes Like, she turns it up to 10, he turns it up to 10. And they do kind of, they riff away off each other. I'm saying all this in the context of this being a terrible movie, by the way, now. But so when I say they're riffing off each other, it's not like you're watching De Niro and Pacino in action. It's just that they sort of, he doesn't.
They shout at each other.
Yeah, they shout at each other. Yeah, and it works. Yeah. It works away at grand, like for whatever. Of course, when you get Taylor, you get Burton as well at this era, which is interesting because obviously McCain and Burton would have been kind of contemporaries coming up through. Burton obviously would have been way ahead of him in terms of stardom and so on and so forth. But he had met Richard Burton once before. Burton had obviously done Hamlet. Caine had seen him doing Hamlet, and Caine was impressed for whatever reason at the speed of Burton's Hamlet. So he said to him, whenever he met Burton, he said, "Richard, I loved your Hamlet. It was the fastest I'd ever seen. Again, I wish I could do a good Welsh accent, but I can't, so I won't." Burton's reply was, "The pub's close at 10:30.
Look, a good line, but if I can help you with your Welsh accent, if you want to try that again, is to use the Caine approach of go for Indian and just pass it off as Welsh.
Pubs close at 10:30. That's terrible.
That's enough to get you cancelled. It's great.
It is.
It's just that little snip. It's a pure Mike Reid at a UKIP concert.
I tell you what I'd like to see. I would love to see, of all the great Caine impersonators and so on and so on, I would like to see Rob Brydon actually do that back and forth between Mick Caine and Richard Burton about Burton's fast Hamlet. You get, the fastest I've ever seen, Richard. Pubs close at 10:30. Fantastic.
You see, if you let yourself go, you just inhabit the characters there, Mick.
Yeah,
you're too self-conscious about it.
It was terrible. It was terrible. Do you want to hear what happened at the Christmas party when they all met up?
I do, yes.
Well, there was a rap party for Zee and Co. It happened to be kind of coming up to Christmas of 71. Came out in 72, the movie. So obviously Liz was there and Richard turned up for a couple of drinks. So Caine went over to Richard and wished him a happy Christmas. Burton just looked at him and said, "Why don't you go fuck yourself?" I mean, where do you go from there?
Not an awful lot. There's not an awful lot your friendship can go from there, really, is it? It's just
back to the bar, I think. Just back, straight back to the bar. So that was Caine and Richard Burton. Caine, you know what? I was thinking of going down the road and looking at Caine feuds, but you know what? He had a bit of an in and out with Richard Harris, but other than that, Caine's such a likable chap. I mean, who's going to feud with Caine?
Nobody. I mean, yeah. Just one thing briefly to cover. There was a hilarious kind of montage in this movie where Caine's character and Susannah Yorke piss off to Scotland for a romantic weekend. And it is essentially, again, going back to Athletic Caine, watching him clamber over the rocks at this lake with all the athletic grace of a mountain goat on ketamine. He's just... You nearly expect just to see an extra's hand just come out of shot, the director's hand just come out, just cup his arse and just give him a over a rock, And it's shot in the same way as that My Lovely Horse video from Father Ted's.
Yeah, it's just these Athletic Caine again. So we know in the course of the last 20 odd movies, we have Athletic Caine, we have pretty much the inability to throw a baseball. We have clearly, I mean, I would need to see I do not believe that he could play ping pong the way he plays ping pong at the beginning of this movie.
Not a chance.
So, not a hope. And you are quite right. In that scene in Scotland, clamber, I think he manages two steps before he starts slipping and sliding on the rocks, trying to grab at Susannah Yorke to save him.
There's a Sherpa with an oxygen tank just there beside him.
It's just unbelievable.
Don't forget the closing scene of Get Carter where he's chasing your man across the beach in Newcastle, and it looks like it's in slow motion.
Yeah, it really is two men in their late 30s, and also it's early 70s, late 30s, which is 21st century, mid 50s,
70s, 70s.
Well, if you like, yeah, and I mean we're struggling. We're struggling here now.
Just so we don't forget, we shouldn't let Brian Hutton, the director, off the hook here. This is a man who directed Where Eagles Dare and Kelly's Heroes, so more of an action aficionado here. A lot like really Zack Schneider deciding to fucking direct Uncle Vanya There is zero flair. Everything is flat. Everything is a close up of the stars. You get no sense of scope. It's just dreadful. And it's pretty much, I don't say it would kill his career, but he's very few kind of directing credits after this.
Yeah, Caine says he's one of the funniest men he ever knew, and hilarious on set. Wonderful to set a nice atmosphere.
Oh, hashtag Bants.
Yeah, early 70s bands. You can only, the mind boggles. Yeah. It was, a couple of other small bits of interest, like Edna O'Brien script. She got £69,000. £69,000 in 1970. Nice. Very nice. 1971. That bought her a 6-bedroom house on Carlisle Square in Chelsea in London. This house became quite renowned as a sort of party central and kind of her home in London for a long, long time. That house now would cost something around 10 million or something like that. Like I said earlier on, she was very annoyed that the lesbian love triangle was kind of tacked on at the end, and there was a lot of rewriting of the script. But, hey, 6-bed house,
But there's no fucking lesbian love triangle in this at all. I don't know what I mean. Feels like an afterthought, the way that they play. Oh, yeah, by the way, we should probably have Zee seduce Susannah Yorke's character in order to completely ruin the relationship, that the burgeoning relationship with her with the husband, even though that the relationship is already on the rocks and he's moved on to the secretary. It's like, this got good reviews in places.
It's bizarre. And let me just go back to that lesbian thing. I mean, I have started, since beginning this process with you and listening to how you kind of work through plots and what you look for, right? I have started to do this, which is I'm looking at certain things that happen in a movie and going, if that wasn't there, would it make any difference to the movie? And in Caine movies so far, we're finding that a lot of the time, a lot of what would be considered the key stuff doesn't need to be there at all. It has no bearing whatsoever on the plot. And this is another classic example. Like, didn't need Zee to seduce Stella. Didn't need this kind of frisson of lesbianism.
No, not at all.
Anywhere.
No.
Pointless.
No, like if I can fucking paraphrase Sam Cooke and say, don't know much about sex geometry, but this is not a lesbian love triangle.
No, it's not. You're quite right. I've overextended myself mathematically on that one. It's not at all. It's just a pointless flat line of a plot kind of diversion that doesn't need to be there at all. You're quite right. It got mixed reviews, but good reviews. It was actually nominated for a Golden Globe, Best English Language.
Well, that means nothing. That means nothing. Golden Globes, the British, the Hollywood Foreign Press, just dreadful. An excuse for elderly men to rub themselves off attractive young women.
Oh God! Right. So what have we gone through this? So the theatre has been. You've cancelled the theatre. I
haven't cancelled it. I just said it plays no role in appropriate role in modern culture.
Okay. You shut down the theatre. You shut down the Golden Globes.
I think you'll find the coronavirus has done that.
Yeah. Okay. You've run a line through the theatre. You've run a line through the Golden Globes, and you run a line through something else that I've actually just forgotten. What was the other thing you ran a line through?
Classical music.
Oh, classical music. That was it. Classical music. Man, there's a lot to unpack there. I don't know if this was a hit or not. I don't really care either. Do you know?
I was trying to look at the box office of this. I think it's one of those things that people don't like to talk about. So it's probably a tax write-off for the production company or the film studio at the time.
A pretty repulsive film. Mark Soda Caine, as always, we're not marking the film, we're marking Caine's performance. I'm going to let you lead off on this one.
Yeah, much like the finger, the amount of fingers he used to stick in Liz Taylor's ear as a means of foreplay here, I'll give it 1.
Whoa. I'm going to stop you there now, because this is a landmark moment here now. I'm going to stop. This now, if you're saying 1, this is the lowest mark you've given him in the entirety of the first 20-odd films of his career that we're covering.
Yes, I fucking hated this with a fiery intensity. This was an awful experience for me. I had to watch this in multiple sittings because I found myself like chewing through my fingers, waiting for each scene to end. I hated it. I hated it so much. This is like the Abu Ghraib of movies for me. It was like, instead of Barney being fucking blasted through, the theme from Barney being blasted through my fucking ears, this was essentially just the most god-awful, hammy, pointless sub 2 hours of my life. I go back maybe to the Leaving Cert where I experienced such an uncomfortable long period of time.
I would say that if you ever in your life get to meet or have any contact with Caine, I'd say of all the things you'll ask him is possibly, why did you do Zee and Co? Why did you do that? Explain to me, why did you upset me?
No, because I think there's lots of other things. Why did you do X, Y, and Z? I would be asking about Zee and Co. I'd be asking him to do his Welsh accent for me. That'd be. I'd hand him a baseball and I'd say, throw this and give me your best Welsh accent, please.
That sounds much.
So he can spend 50% of his brain on throwing the baseball, 50% of his brain on doing the accent.
That is right, because that is how much he spends doing accents, isn't it? 50% of his performance kind of mentality is on the accents. Will we move along from this weirdness? Are we done? Is that anything else you want to say about this horror show?
No. Well, I mean, this is a democracy, so I suppose that you better give your own mark.
Oh yeah, I wouldn't have gone 1. I would have probably gone 4 or 3 or something. But you're an angry man about this. So I'm going to give way to your anger on this. I'm going to give way to your anger, and I'm going to give it. Good. I'll go with your 1 or your 2. I don't think he's that. He does his best.
Well, maybe instead of trying his best, he should have stayed at home pruning his roses.
Yeah, he actually bought a big.
That's not a euphemism. Just explain it to
them. Yeah, no, he should have actually just pruned his.
Oh, lad, you never know. I was at home the other day pruning my roses, and my old one walked in.
Well, I got this script for this film, and I saw Liz Taylor, and it got me pruning the roses a bit more vigorously. But then I got sense, and I actually read it. Can you believe I actually read the script? Well, I can't.
And took the job after reading it.
Shocking. Yeah, he'd actually bought a big slab of land and a big pile of bricks. Mill house.
Slab of land and pile of bricks.
Yeah. Technical. Slab of land, pile of bricks. It's architecture-y talky again. I think we had some architecture-y talking on Kidnapped as well. Here's more of it. Anyway, yeah. Mill house in Windsor. He had to sell it some years later to Jimmy Page. It was actually where John Bonham died. I know you're a Zeppelin fan. John Bonham died at Millhouse. So that's where Caine was at. It wasn't like he needed the money. He didn't need to do Zee and Co for any reason whatsoever.
Just the opportunity to star with Liz Taylor at the peak of her powers.
The one thing that's crossed my mind before we leave this wreck was that maybe there must have been a bit of him going. He could go back to the lads that he grew up with in the East End and go, Liz Taylor, lads. Liz Taylor. Maybe?
Do you imagine he has a lot of those gatherings where he goes back to an ever-decreasing circle of Cockney Barrow friends?
Yeah.
Rib him about his Hollywood career, but secretly jealous, but also want to hear all the ins and outs. So, hopefully, literally, ins and outs of his dabbling in Hollywood.
Yeah, I'd say they're all sitting around with jelly deals, having a big old chat about Mick's latest escapades. That would be a regular monthly thing. A monthly thing in the Elephant and Castle. That's my imaginings. Anyway, let's move away from the weirdness. Unless you've anything left to say about this horror show?
No. If I do, we can always do it as a complicated drop-in later on.
Yes, we can. We certainly can. We'll move along, from this weirdness, hopefully to something less head-wrecking. I think we know better. Next up is Pulp. Caine is back with the Get Carter director Mike Hodges. It's a comedy drama, though I think at this stage we know that those sort of labels are becoming quite redundant. I had a fast look at the plot, and it's about a writer of fairly leery Pulp Fiction. But stay with me. It's the type that would have been kind of gloried by Tarantino many years later. One alias that Caine's character uses is S-Odomy. So Lord knows where he's taking us. But Mickey Rooney is in it. Mickey Rooney.
I mean, what could possibly go wrong?
Absolutely nothing at all. Go watch. Pulp actually is quite well regarded back up. It's a bit of what we would call in the business a cult classic. So go have a look at it, see what you think of it, and we will come back here next time and get stuck into Pulp.
And as usual, if you have any questions, hit us up on Twitter at MarkofCaine2. Don't forget to like and subscribe on the platforms that allow that kind of thing. And we will see you next week.
See you.
Bye.
Bye.
That's it for this week's episode. Thanks for listening. Make sure to like and subscribe. Maybe leave a comment. Only nice ones, though. Mean comments will make Alfie cry, and no one wants to see that. The Mark of Caine podcast is written, researched, and presented by Stephen Black and Michael Foley, and edited by Andrew Foley. Music is composed by Stephen Black. If you'd like to get in touch, you'll find us on Twitter at Mallow News and at Mark of Caine2. And if you enjoyed this episode, you'll find all the rest wherever you get your podcasts. The Mark of Caine is a Mallow News 2 Cubes production. See you next time.
Come on.